This always pops up. I bought this at the auction, at the Murdaugh auction. I guess that
No
was
kidding.
I think it was in Alex's office. It's from the College World, the 2012 College World Series, where the Gamecocks won the World Series.
Wow. All right, guys. So we are live today with someone awesome that I found on TikTok, Crime and Cask. Thank you for joining me today.
Crime and Cask. How you doing?
Guys, this is the Murdaugh expert right here, man.
Well, thank you.
So I kind of want you to give us an introduction about who you are for anyone who hasn't seen you. I'm going to put your YouTube page up, but you also have a website, but this is your TikTok. So tell me your background first.
That's my TikTok. Yeah, that is. So Crime and Cask really started a couple of years ago. It was the Alex Murdaugh trial that had started it all. And I had a TikTok just really for, follow my kids, and we'd make silly videos. And then this happened on June 7th, 2021. And then I started listening to podcasters, and I started listening to just different shows on YouTube. And then I started reading about it, and I was like, oh my, like, this guy's guilty. This is crazy. The whole bloody T-shirt and all the other things. And so I was like, wow, so this trial is going to be interesting. And then the trial started, and everything that I was told and listened to, none of it made any sense to me. So I changed my TikTok to what was to Crime and Cask. And I changed it to Crime and Cask because I would sit out on I've got this little southern porch, and I have this little bed that's in a hanging porch bed. And I would sit out there, I pour a glass of bourbon at night after the day was over, and I'd just get on TikTok and TikTok live, and we'd talk about Murdaugh. I'm like, does any of this make sense to anybody today? Yeah, she hates me. Does any of this make sense to anybody? And it just kind of started from there, and it just took off. Actually, that Mandy Matthew, who's right there, I blame her, honestly, for creating, I'm sure she hates me, but she can blame herself for Crime and Cask, because I listened to her podcast, and they were all wrong about Mr. Murdaugh. So she has nobody but to blame but herself.
So do you have a journalism background, or because I was, no. I reached out to you and I said, I'm a former journalist. I was just so impressed by you're literally boots on the ground. You are there. You're interviewing. I just saw your interview with Blanca. Like, you really got invested in this.
I really got my background is not in journalism whatsoever. I have a business background. I used to run corporations. I was in international business. I used to go to China all the time and Singapore all the time. Travel the world, travel the country. Bought and sold a couple of small businesses, and then kind of call it retired, but then got into this because it happened right here in South Carolina where I live. And it was a big deal. I mean, not only in South Carolina, but it was a big deal across the country, across the world. Honestly, I have people from Australia that bought my book, defending Alex Murdaugh, not guilty of a reasonable doubt. And that was a very controversial book.
I have a lot of folks from Australia. One of the cases I also cover is the Watts case. I don't know if you've heard of that one, the Chris Watts case. And that's the thing I notice about the true crime community. There's kind of these little pods of different communities and different cases. And you have one side, feeling this way and one side feeling the other. So it sounds like you started out thinking he was guilty.
I did, based off of what I heard and saw.
Okay, so then you dug in and you did your research.
That's it. I have been to Moselle, Lord, so many times. The people down there wave at me when they see me because they know it's me. Because if I see him outside, I'll pull over and I'll talk to him. I'll say, hey, you see me driving back and forth. I'm just, doing this experiment. Don't, I'm not doing anything weird. And, if you don't want me to do it, let me know. They're like, no, go ahead. They're just such nice people. But I've been to Moselle so many different times and trying to take the evidence from the state and say, okay, this is what the state said. How is this possible on this road? Right. and like throw on Maggie's phone. This is a good one to talk about. Maggie's phone.
So I was like, I wanted to plan, but the problem is this case is so crazy. And, someone's just saying they're watching it on Hulu. The first time, I remember my husband came down and goes, you got to watch this. He's like, just when you think it's over, something else in this family happens. And it's like, he's like, you can't even make this up. So, let's even just kind of dive in with what you were saying.
Sure.
Because there's obviously so many parts to this that we could do several podcasts about this. So
several, and there's some big ones, and this is a big one. In fact, I met with Alex's defense attorneys, Jim Riven and Dick Harpootlian, about 2 months ago, maybe a little bit longer, but not very much, and gave them literally let me grab it for you real quick.
Sure.
I gave them a 60-page dossier.
Fucking demons. Yeah, I just finished the Hulu.
Oh, the Hulu thing. Well, I heard it was good acting, but as far as following the narrative, I don't think it followed them.
Truth to it.
The narrative that's out there, let's put it that way. So let's talk about 90612.
I would say, okay, so majority of people, like if you're taking a step back, because you're so into this, all these facts. I think most of us are looking at it and saying, this dude did it. He was caught on Paul's phone. We heard his voice. Okay, case closed. It's done. So let's kind of start from there. I think what general public perceives, because they haven't done as much digging as you have.
Yeah. So, all right, let's do that. Let's start down with the kennels. So when I met with Dick and Jim, there was a couple of things we talked about, and then let's say the kennels. So he comes down to the kennels. Paul is in the kennel with Cash the dog, which is his friend Rogan Gibson's dog. Okay. He's with Rogan Gibson's dog. There's his buddy Anthony Cook. Go to Ale.
Oh, your audio is cutting out. Okay. Give me 1 second. Wendy, are you from where you were saying he was checking on Cash, the dog?
Yeah, let me close a couple of my browsers here, maybe get a better connection. How's that?
Oh, no, God.
Going live on the air. You see me?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Okay, yes. Okay. Start from, you were just saying Paul went down to, I guess we got a little bit of a connection issue there. You said Paul went down to go check on, was it Cash, the friend's dog at the kennels?
Yes, Rogan Gibson.
Took that video.
Yeah, there's the, pause that for a second. Can you pause that video?
Yeah. Let me see if I can. Yeah.
Right there.
Right there.
Pause it. This is great. This is a great view. No, this is perfect. This is a great view.
Yeah, I call this my B-roll.
Can you go just a little bit ahead? Can you go just a little bit ahead where we had that?
Let's see if I can pause it at the right point. Yeah.
It's coming up right there. Pause it right there.
Let's me pause it there. Okay, so there's the kennels. Okay.
Okay, so you see the dog kennels in back, and here is the hanger. and there's a shed across from the hangar. And you see that gravel road that's runs behind the hangar, and it comes around. You see the gravel road that goes to the dog kennels, and then there's another one that runs around the back. It kind of curves down there at the bottom. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that curve right there, the way that Alec came down was that curve. So what you can't see here is if you follow that all the way down, he would go back to the house that way. He wouldn't go back to the house where these little tracks are up in the upper right-hand corner of what you're showing. That's not the way they came. They always came this kind of back way. And so he drove his golf cart, which is about a 2-minute ride from the house down to the kennels. And that's where Maggie and Paul were. They were down to kennels. Now, also on the other side of this road, you can see there's a woods right there. That's a deep woods. And then if you keep going back and behind, you're going to run into the cabin. That's the cabin that a lot of people talked about, that Paul and his friends and Buster and everybody kind of stayed at. And
okay, like a party cabin, hang out with the friends. Okay.
And behind there's another road that goes back there. It's got a gravel road because there's like another entrance. So there's a few ways into this property, but this is a great view right here. So he comes down from the house. He goes in front of the hangar and he drives over to the dog kennels right by the chicken coop.
Okay.
And that's when he comes down. And then you can hear Maggie going, "Oh, look, Bob has got, he's got a guinea." That's what she said. He's got a guinea. And Paul says, "It's a chicken." And that's what everybody's heard. And they're like, "Oh my God, he was there when they got off."
Yeah.
And I was like,
you hear him say, "Bubba." Yeah.
Yeah. Come here, Bob. Come here, Bob. I mean, number one, does that sound at all when he's saying that? He's like, "Come here, Bob. Come here, Bob." I mean, I've done the same thing with my dog. It doesn't sound like somebody who's about ready to commit mass, as we say on TikTok, murders.
Right. Or family annihilation. We call it that too. Yeah.
Or clip his family.
Except for Buster, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. Buster was a couple hours away. So, all right. So now he's down there. And then they said, "Well, what'd you do next, Mr. Murdaugh?" He said, "Well, I didn't want to be down there, so I left." He's like, "You left?" He's like, "Did you just leave?" He's like, "Well, no, I didn't just leave. Like, I talked to Maggie for a little bit." "How long did you talk to her?" He's like, "I don't know, 30 seconds, maybe a minute." And then he says, "And what'd you do?" He says, "And I went back to the house and I went and got into the air conditioning because it was hot and I didn't want to sweat." And I was doing exactly that with the dogs running around. One's got a chicken in his mouth. I got to take the chicken out. He's got bovine blood on his t-shirt. And so I asked him, Jim and Dick, and I said, "On this, where the hangar is?" I said, because my theory is a 2-shooter theory. Okay. And those 2 shooters hung out in the woods on the other side of this hangar. And from the other side of that hangar, you have a perfect view. Where are you going?
I'm trying to see if I can get a little bit of a better view of that wooded area on this video. I don't know if I have it, but I might. I notice there's that wooden fence. Is this super close to the main road?
Well, you can see the dog kennels. Well, when they were there, you could see them from the road.
From the road, okay.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah.
Because that's what it appears to look like. That I could park my car out on the road and literally walk and kind of climb over that fence to get right onto their property by those kennels.
Well, a little bit different. So there's a spot, there's a road called Cross Swamp Road. That's probably about a mile, maybe, from the cabin, from that entrance that goes into the dog kennels. And before you get to Cross Swamp Road, there is a little road that goes in, and there's a bunch of trees. It looks like a little hunting road, I guess. And that's, in my opinion, where they parked, because you can park your vehicle and no one will see it. You don't want to park on the side of the road because then you're going to go, "Oh, I just saw, so-and-so's truck. What's that doing out there? So you park out of there. But it's about a 9-minute walk from there to the kennels. But what you do is you walk right across Moselle Road and you're into the woods. And then from the woods, you can just stay, no one sees you. And then you can walk all through the woods and go to this little back woods right here, which is about 5 to 6 feet below ground level of where the dog kennels are. So he's down at the dog kennels. And then I asked him, Jim and Dick, I said, did Maggie, did Alex ever tell you, did Maggie get in the golf cart with him when he went back? And Dick said, no. I was like, I said, what'd she do? And he said, well, she walked. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, she walked. He drove the golf cart and she walked. So they were all at the kennels, right? And he's like, I'm out of here. And so he said, what did you talk about? And he said, well, we talked about Paul. We were concerned about him. It wasn't drug cartels. Or shrug cartels, I guess we say it on TikTok.
Yeah, we can talk about that too in a minute. Yeah.
So then she walks alongside the golf cart as he's just kind of driving it slowly. And he walks her to the hangar door. Now, when you get to that hangar door, when you're in these backwoods, and I have a bunch of people send me a lot of photographs and videos and stuff from those woods and around there, you cannot see on the other side of that hangar because there's a big, the back wall is there, but you have a perfect view of the kennels. And so then at almost 9:00 at night on a June summer night, then he takes off and goes that same way away from them on that road back towards the house. So he's not driving towards the kennels anymore. He's driving away from the kennels to go back to the house. It takes him about 2 minutes. And he left at around 8:40. I think it was 8:44, 8:45, something along those lines. And he got back to the house roughly around the same time that the shooters would have came out. I don't know, but you got to give it about 30 seconds. But he gets into the house, and then Paul's phone locks at 8:49. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, 8:49:01. So Paul's phone locks. Now, the other thing I know is that because another video that somebody sent me, it's a 23-second walk from these woods to the feed room door. 23 seconds. So at 8:49:01, he locks his phone, puts it in his back pocket, and what's he probably do? He probably walks into the feed room.
Right.
So now he's just a sitting duck, literally. There is no way out. His mom is gone, as they thought. His dad is gone. He's all alone. Let's just do this and get out of here. And so at 8:49:01, you had 23 seconds. You're around 8:24, 8:25 is when I believe the first shot rang out. And then you're going to hear probably some screaming, and the person falls kind of backwards. And as Paul takes 2 or 3 steps out into the doorway, another shot happens, which is probably about 6 seconds later at 8:49:31. And that's when Maggie's phone locks at 8:49:31. So, she's probably heard shots before, but now all of a sudden she's hearing screaming in the second shot, and the phone locks at 8:49:31, and she comes out. Now here's where it gets tricky.
Okay.
Where the doghouse is, you can kind of see it in front of the hangar there. There's a doghouse right there. I'm not talking about the dog kennels. There's a small wooden doghouse. It's kind of in front of the little truck. And that's the spot where Maggie falls, and that's where they find her laying face down. That is 30 feet away from the hangar door. She is also 30 feet away from the feed room door. But 30 feet may sound like a lot, but it's only about 12 human steps. So it doesn't take long. It would take somebody 4 to 5 seconds to maybe kind of run out and go 30 feet. It doesn't take very long. But whoever took out Paul has to be at the doghouse as she locks her phone at 8:49:31, as the prosecution said, and runs to her baby, as the prosecution said. Somebody has to be there. Let's call it 8:40. Let's say 5 seconds. Somebody has to be there in 5 seconds after she locks the phone, which means a second shot. So in 5 seconds, you have got to drop that gun, pick up another GUN and the 300, and you have got to run to that spot, which is also 30 feet, so another 12 steps. And if you're Alec at 6'4", you have to either drop to a knee or put it below your waist to start to, what do we call, pew pew her, right there, because you have to be at that. That second shooter has to be at that doghouse before she gets there, because we're talking about time, speed, distance, and that's it. It's just time, speed, and distance. It's two moving targets.
The crazy thing about, in all cases, moments count, right? Like when the timelines line up, now I'm understanding what you're saying about the 2-shooter theory makes more sense when we're talking about the locks on the cell phones and pings going on, and the upload of, the Paul video. Like, moments in time are so impactful, especially when you're going to court over things like this too.
Right. Yeah. And it's things that SLED never tested because they never presented it. But, he's sitting in the house and this is all happening. So now what do you do? But let me explain something. If Alec did it, and I'm sure you've got people maybe in your comments, they're going to say he did it. Okay, let's roll with that for a second. Let's say he did do it. So now you've got 8:49:01, and again, so is he going to automatically wait until he sees him at 8:49:01? When does he, go get the first shotgun and take him out? But he has to not only do it once, he's got to reload and do it again as Paul takes 2 to 3 steps out in the doorway. Now, 2 to 3 steps, I can imagine after you've been, just taken out, or tried to be taken out, is probably not really fast. So it's going to take you a couple of seconds to walk that. So now the second one comes in, and again, there's timing involved here, and he has to be at this spot before Maggie gets to that spot. And I'm telling you, there's just not enough time between when Paul locks his phone, and now we're back to this guy. There's just not enough time for him to do it. He's 350 pounds. He had bad knees. He was supposedly, on his medication, and he had bad eyesight. There's just no way to get from that point A to point B, because you have to be at that spot, because when the 300 was sent into her, she had stippling on her body, and stippling is think of it like a dust that comes out at the end of a GUN, and it only happens if you're like 3 to 5 feet from somebody. So if you're further away, like the Hulu show presented, that's not a true depiction of what happened. Someone was right there.
Well, also the timeline doesn't really also make sense. Where would he go hide these guns and have time to make that 911 phone call? Like that timeline doesn't really, never made sense to me either, because they're going to recover those guns. I really, in the beginning also, like you, was like, yeah, slam dunk case. He wanted to get rid of the problems with Paul and everything that was going on. But the more, you dig into it and you investigate, the more it does seem to me other people have to be involved in this. And I feel like it's a setup. Someone in the comments section said, is this drugs? I mean, obviously we knew Alec had a opiate addiction, but that's really nothing compared to hard drugs, right? I don't think anyone's going to take your family out over some opiates. Let's get real.
Yeah.
What do you think a motive would be for someone? It's the crash,
Well,
the boat crash.
just to finish on that, at 8:53:15, which was 4 minutes after Maggie's phone locked, which would have been, roughly 4 minutes after she was taken out. All of a sudden, her phone starts picking up and recording steps, and they're very slow steps.
Okay, I didn't know about that part. Did they play that in court?
They did say that. Well, yeah, they did say it, but they kind of skipped over it. But the thing you can't skip over is this is the time that everybody says Alex should be, washing himself off, changing his clothes, doing all these things. But her phone takes 59 steps from 8:53:15 to 8:55:32. So that is what, 2 minutes and 15 seconds that phone is moving, and it's only moving 59 steps in total. And if you go back to that picture of the
Let's see if we can get that one
of the hangar, I want to show you where 59 steps are. Okay, stop right there. Stop right there. This is perfect. Okay, you see the doghouse in front of the truck, kind of to the right, closer to the dog kennels. There's a little. It looks like a little housing. It's got the little hole there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where she is. Okay. 59 steps. Look, take this to the other side of the hangar, and the corner there where that gravel road is. That's 59 steps. That's 149 feet. I measured it in Google Maps, but that is 59 steps, and it takes you right there. Because I thought to myself, okay, what's 59 steps? Okay, it's 149 feet, but which way are you going to go? And you're not going to walk across to this shed over here. Because what are you doing over in shed? You go the other way, you're in the woods. Go the other way, you're in the other woods. The only way to walk 59 steps and not be in the woods is to go in this back corner. And ironically enough, if you remember when the sheriff who was first there was talking to Alec, and he said, what's all these tire tracks? This is where he was pointing to. So the tire tracks they come around the hangar, where that road comes around the hangar, and then the tire tracks go off that road, and they do a U-turn and come back onto the road, onto that gravel road.
Okay.
Right where the person would be after walking for 59 steps. It matches up. It matches up perfectly. So what was your question?
Well, when we're talking about motive, do we I've always had this, and I don't know if you can get into the cousin Eddie theory and all that, but
I talked to his attorney this summer.
But from who you have talked to down there, and obviously this is a small town, and you're a little more connected, I think, than most people who are just watching this as a Netflix series or Hulu series, sorry. And what is kind of the conversation of what a motive would be and who would do this?
So to answer that, let me back up just a second. You ever watch any of those mob movies, mobster movies? And, Joey, he gets picked up by the police. But Joey knows a lot, right? Joey knows a lot, and he just got picked up by the cops. Is Joey going to talk? I don't know. I don't think he's going to talk. Why would he talk? I don't know. Well, why don't we make sure Joey doesn't talk?
Right.
And Joey gets clipped, and then all of a sudden, no more talking. And so when you back up and you talk about the Mallory Beach case, and you were just showing a picture of Anthony Cook. And so when people ask me, like, well, who did it then? I said, well, I think it was Paul's friends. So everybody goes, oh, Anthony Cook? I'm like, no. You got to dig a little bit deeper than Anthony Cook. That is pretty simple, just because it's Mallory's boyfriend. Who is Mallory's boyfriend's best friend? Anyway, who is responsible for the death of a guy by the name of Stephen Smith in 2015? I don't know if you remember that, but that is a case that's a big case down here in the Low Country and in South Carolina in general, because it's an unsolved case where Stephen Smith, on July 8th, 2015, He was hit by a side view mirror, and back of his head hits the road. He bleeds out, and he dies. And it's been unsolved for 10 years.
Ever since. And there's the theory that Buster and his friends were possibly involved in that because supposedly Buster had a sexual relationship with him and wanted to keep this private. That's, I think, what general public kind of thinks about Stephen Smith case.
Yeah, that's not true at all. Buster, he's been cleared by our law enforcement division. He was in Esto Beach with his mom and his brother, who are now passed, but Buster had nothing to do with this at all. I had a confidential source come to me, literally came to me out of the blue, based off of a story that I wrote, and they came to me, and it was like they needed to make a change in this story that I wrote, and it was such a small change, and I thought, well, you're making a big deal out of this, and knowing who this person was, I said, I'm going to call him and find out. Okay, so I called him. I said, listen, I figured it out. I changed the name. This person did not want me to refer to Patrick Wilson, who is a person of interest in the death of Stephen Smith, did not want me to call his mother by the last name of Altman. And I thought, well, I need to talk to this person. So I called him, and it was an hour and a half later, and I had a taped conversation with this person, who's a very credible source, was at Patrick Wilson's house on July 8th, 2015. They reported to me, and again, I have this on tape. I gave it to SLED. I've worked with law enforcement on this for months. This person was there, and they walked in at around 11:30 after they got off work, talked to Patrick's great-grandmother, who's now passed, and said, "Where's Pat?" And the great-grandmother, according to this person, said, he's out with that Conley fella. They said, well, what are they doing? She's like, and they're out driving around. And then they said it was probably about 3 or 4 hours later. So we're talking about 3 o'clock in the morning. They said Pat comes in, and he is just really out of shape. He's just bent out of shape. And they come in, and he says, according to them, they heard it directly out of Patrick Wilson's mouth. I think we hit someone. I think we killed someone. And then he proceeded to throw up all over the house. And this person was not happy because they had to help clean it up. So we now have, they were in the MATE report, original MATE report, which is an accident report that the State Highway Patrol put together. They were in that originally. The New York Post has called them persons of interest. But this person heard it right out of Patrick Wilson's mouth that they hit someone. They killed someone. So that is a big deal. But what makes it even more interesting, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything, so let's just get this clear. However,
we're just going to call this all entertainment purposes only, guys. So
alleged and entertainment purposes only. But I'm going to tell you the evidence in which I know. So I'm not saying this happened and this person or persons did this. But when I interviewed Blanca in April, before I interviewed Blanca, I was talking to her author, and I said, you know what? I said, I have a couple of questions for Blanca, if you don't mind, before we meet. And we met at some golf club in Orangeburg, South Carolina. And she said, yeah, sure. And so I sent her a picture of a specific white four-door Ford F-150.
Yes.
And the reason I sent that is because when Blanca was on the stand and Dick Arpulian was cross-examining her, he was talking about something else. And then she just starts talking about, well, it was about 3:30 and I went upstairs. I was putting some clothes away. And as I was putting some clothes away, I looked out the window and I saw a white pickup truck down at the hangar. And And she goes, I thought, well, maybe it was Paul. I didn't know if it was Paul, but maybe I thought, well, maybe it's Paul. So I left the front door open. And then she left soon after. And so Dick really didn't pick up on that. And so I wanted to follow up with her on that. And so I specifically asked her author, I said, send this to Blanca and ask her, is this the truck? Not, does this kind of look like it? Is this sort of the truck? Is this the truck she saw? The truck. And the response was confirmation on the truck.
Yes.
And so when I talked to her, when we had our interview, I started talking to her about this again. And I was trying to, before I told her whose truck it was, I said, now, are you sure it was an F-150? And she literally got mad at me. Like, she was like, I know the difference between an F-250 and an F-150. It was an F-150. I said, you're sure it was a four-door? She goes, listen, I know what a white four-door F-150. I'm like, hey, listen, I'm just double checking to make sure.
Just trying to confirm, right?
You saw I said, now who has a four-door? I said, there's a lot of white Ford F-150s that run around. She's like, well, that's true. She goes, the grandfather had one, but he was dying. John Marvin had one, and Paul had one. However, John Marvin was with his dad, and Paul's was going into the shop. So Paul drove his Ford F-150 down to the shop, and what did they say Paul does? He carries these GUNs around in his truck. What does he do when he's not going to have his truck? He takes them out. And that's what Blanca said. And I said, Blanca, where would he take these GUNs? She goes, well, he would put them in the hangar. I said, okay. So we kept on about the truck. And I said, so why did you think it was, somebody else? And she's like, well, she goes, that's simple. She goes, the anybody in the family, whether it be John Marvin or Grandpa or Alec or even if Maggie drives on down, they all park in the same spot, the same way. She goes, it's what they do.
It's
I said,
habit.
It's habit. I said, and this truck wasn't parked. She goes, no, it wasn't parked that way. It wasn't parked in the spot that they normally park. So that's why I was confused at whose truck it was. She's like, whose truck was it? And I said, well, the picture of the truck that I sent you, that you told me that was the truck you saw, was Sean Conley's truck. And then her eyes got really big and like a deer in headlights. And she started backtracking. And she was like, well, I didn't say it was lifted. And I didn't say it had big tires. And I said, no, you did. We talked about this truck for 15 minutes before I told you who it was. And then it was, well, listen, I got to live here. And I said, listen, I understand all that. I said, but you just told me, not only here in this interview, but you told your author, and I have a text that says, yes, that's the truck I saw. So why is Sean Conley's truck down there? And then the other thing that was weird is that when you look at connections, so you have a boat girl, Miley Altman. She's Connor Cook's not wife. Okay. Connor Cook is the one that everybody thought if Paul wasn't driving the boat, it was Connor. In fact, Connor is right there in gray shirt, and there's Miley to the left. So they always thought Paul was going to try to pin it on Connor. Well, Miley Altman, as you've heard that name before, right? And the Altman name, she's related to Patrick Wilson.
Okay.
They're both Altmans. And then we go back to Rogan Gibson. He is kin to a girl by the name of Chrissy Gibson, and Chrissy Gibson was dating Patrick Wilson, and her father was allowing Patrick to live in a house 4 minutes away from Moselle on Cross Swamp Road. That's a fact. And here's the other fact. Again, for entertainment purposes only, alleging this, but these are facts. In the trial, the defense argued and said the shooter was somewhere between 5'2" and 5'4". You remember that?
Yes.
Because the prosecution was making fun of, oh, here, little short guys running all around shooting them back. Well, there was a warrant issued for Patrick Wilson in 2015, 82 days prior to the death of Stephen Smith. And in that warrant, it lists his name, his age, and his weight and his height. How tall do you think he is in this warrant? 5'4".
Was he under 18?
He was around 18, 19.
Oh, your audio. Okay.
I said he was around 18 or 19 at the time.
So a minor?
No, he was not a minor. Paul was 16, I think, at the time, but
Right.
Patrick was not. But Patrick was 5'4". Again, not saying they did this or did that, but we go back to the person that I had interviewed about the death of Stephen Smith. And in that interview, I asked them specifically about that, and they were like, "Well, I don't know anything about that." And I said, "I'm not asking you if they did it. I'm not asking you to know anything about it. What I'm saying is, do you think it's possible? Is it in them to have done this?"
Mm-hmm.
And they responded, if they were doing the DRUGS as they were, which one starts with an M and another one starts with a C, if they were doing those, yes, I believe it would be in them to do that.
Right. Like, we got to remember these kids were partying on another level, I think, than most normal American kids. I mean, this, they had the money to do it. They had the means to do it.
And they could go to Moselle and do it anytime they wanted to, because there's really no parent watch. And they could go down to those hangars. I mean, I interviewed Patrick Wilson 2 summers ago, and summer before last. And, he knows Moselle very well. He told me about it. And his favorite fishing pond that he had there was a couple of them. They would hunt there all the time. They used the Paul's GUNs. They drank a lot. They did a lot of the DRUGSs there. They just, had the time of their life. All of them. The whole little group.
Was Paul ever questioned in relation to Stephen Smith's case or no?
I don't know. I don't think so. But I know that Buster was. So here's what's interesting. The 3 days after Paul and Maggie, Sled interviewed Buster in the car. And it was probably about an hour. You go to any of the, I think the YT channel has it. And if you go there, you can watch it. And it's about an hour. And about 3/4 of the way through, it's funny because, you can tell when these cops do this stuff. He's like, "Oh, well, I'm going to write something here. So if you just, somebody in the back seat," he's like, "So if you have any questions." And this woman starts, this SLED officer goes, "So what do you think about all this, Buster?" He's like, "What do you think?" "I think about what?" He's like, "Oh, your mom and your brother." He's like, "Well, I mean, I don't know what you're trying to ask." She's like, "Well, do you think it was somebody coming after your brother and your mom just happened to be there and it was a mistake?" He's like, "Oh, absolutely. I think that." And she said something about Stephen Smith. And then the other cop picked it up and he's like, "Yeah, so let me talk to you about Stephen Smith." And he's like, "Have you been hearing any threats, any harassment?" And here's what Buster did. Instead of, this guy was asking, "Is there anything related?" And he said this exactly. "Is there, as it relates to your mother and your brother, have you heard anything about Stephen Smith? Have you had any harassment, any threats, anything coming from Stephen Smith?" But he specifically said your mother and your brother. And Buster took it to be himself. So he started talking about, well, he goes, "I've had some, it was online, and maybe somebody sent me some on Instagram. And do you still have those?" He goes, "I don't know." But he was internalizing it as it was about him. But the cop was asking, as it relates to Stephen Smith, have you heard anything as it relates to your mother and your brother? And Buster just completely missed it. And the guy never really pushed it.
Right.
But they talked about that. And that sled agent who was in the backseat, she thought it was, two people. And then they went right into Stephen Smith. So when I go on TikTok and I go online and I talk about how this is all connected, it's all connected. I'm going to see if I can show you a picture.
And that's the crazy thing is I think we all go immediately to the boat crash. And even, Alec brings it up right away out there the night of the of June 7th. And we have this unsolved case and we have a small town of kids and they talk and they party and they gossip and people know things, obviously.
Yeah, and guess who was who Anthony Cook's best buddy was at his wedding?
The Sean Conley.
Yeah.
And
down in the Low Country, it's like you're either, especially in these small towns, it's related, dated, or hated. That's how everybody's connected. You're either related to them, you dated them, or you hate them.
The interesting thing is I know Paul was younger at the time of Stephen Smith's death, but, circles
he was 16.
19-year-olds will party with 16-year-olds, especially, someone like Paul who has access to party like a 21-year-old.
Right.
So that's why I was kind of curious if Paul was ever questioned about it, or, not saying Paul had anything to do with it, but saying, is Paul's circle involved with Stephen Smith? And everyone was just looking at Buster because of the age difference.
Yeah, so Conley and Wilson are younger than Buster, but older than Paul. That's where the age thing comes in. Yeah, no, I think Paul partied with all different types of people. Yeah. This group being one of them. Anthony Cook, Connor Cook were two close ones, but Paul partied with everybody. Everybody, I think, there's just people that are out there that are like that, where it looked like Paul had a lot of friends, but I don't think he had a lot of friends. I think there was a lot of people that wanted to be around that family and around him and, everything that it had to offer. The big boats, the cars, the trucks, the off-roaders, the 4x4s, the hunting, the fishing.
Going boating, fishing.
Things that most people in his friend group couldn't do if it weren't for him. So, again, I'm not saying that these guys did it, but boy, there's a lot of evidence that this doesn't seem. Well, I shouldn't say doesn't seem. I told David Dick, I said, there's more evidence here in this dossier than there was to convict your client.
Where
stopped a little bit.
Is the so the investigation into Stephen Smith is still open. Are we thinking motive for Paul being taken out was for knowing too much?
Yeah, so one of the things that when I spoke to Patrick in my interview with him, I said, so what do you think about Paul? And he's like, well, yeah, he's a friend, we did stuff together. I'm like, but what about all the stuff he got into? He's like, oh, he would get into all kinds of stuff. He'd get in a car accident, he'd get into a fight, he'd call daddy, granddaddy, they'd get him out of it. And I said, how'd that make you feel? And he's like, I didn't like it because if I did that, I wouldn't get out of it. So the other thing he told me, and the interview was over, I was walking down the street back in my car, and he's like, oh, did I ever tell you that Paul pushed Gloria Satterfield? I said, wait, what? What do you mean? He's like, yeah, Paul pushed Gloria. I'm like, you mean when Gloria passed? He's like, yeah. I'm like,
Oh my gosh, I
this?
just totally forgot about that until you brought it up now. That is another piece. Yeah.
I said, hold on a second. I said, let me get my phone out. And I got it out and I recorded it. And I said, so you're telling me that Paul Murdaugh told you that he pushed Gloria Satterfield off the steps? Yes. I'm like, how many times? Well, I mean, in what context? He's like, oh my God. He goes, it was just all the time. I'm like, what do you mean all the time? He's like, and Paul would just, go out and get drunk. And he goes, I don't know why. Yeah, seemed tougher. And then I spoke to another guy by the name of Steve Patterson. He was a private investigator for the attorney working for Sandy Smith. And I spoke with Steve, and Steve said he interviewed a witness that told him they were at a party that they had heard Sean Conley say that he was the one that hit Stephen Smith. So I think all these guys talked about these type of things. A small group, no one's going to talk. It's not like they're screaming it from a party of 200 people in a house. Just their little small group of guys. They would kind of go out and get drunk and get high, and that's what they would talk about. So it came up. So I think he knew. Now, people would say, well, why would he say anything? Well, he was facing 20 plus years in prison.
Right.
And when I said this to Dick, he's like, well, he never mentioned that to us because Dick was his attorneys, or Jim and Dick were his attorneys as well. I said, you're thinking, I said, Dick, rightly so. You're thinking like an attorney who's been doing this for decades. I said, you got to think like a 19-year-old kid who's facing 20 plus years in prison. And maybe he wouldn't have done it, as we go back to the mob movie. Maybe he wasn't thinking about doing it, but what if he did?
Mm-hmm.
No one else is talking. What if he did? And so that's kind of where I left it with Dick. I'm like, watch any mob movie. I mean, you get rid of your liabilities, right? So maybe that's a possibility, allegedly, for entertainment purposes only. So I gave him all the evidence, and literally, there's. I'm looking at this book. Well, I said 60. I apologize. It's not 60. It's 47 pages of evidence. How it couldn't have been Alec, but did I answer that question? There's so much.
Yeah, like I said, there's so much. I feel like we could do like several episodes of about it, and it's
Go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like Maggie was probably just taken out in the sense of, hey, she's a witness, we got to take her out. Not that she necessarily had anything to do with, Stephen Smith or anything like that, or the boat crash. It's just like she happened to be down there, so we have to do Maggie too.
Right. So here's another thing, and we started talking about this earlier, and it's 906-12. And what happens at 906-12? What happens at 906-12 is that there was an orientation change on Maggie's phone. Her backlight comes on, and there was an orientation change from landscape to portrait, and that was her phone recorded that. Now, here's the other thing. Alec, at this time, at 906-12, Alec is outside the main house, and he's starting to walk to his Suburban. So they don't really have like driveways here. It's a gravel road, and they park in the front yard. And so her phone records that orientation from portrait to landscape. And then at that's at 9:05:44, her backlight comes on and it makes that orientation. And then Alec calls her at 906-12. Okay. So 906-12, and then he thought he heard them coming up. So he hung up right away, and it wasn't them. So he called her right back at 906-14, and it went unanswered. And at 906-20, her phone makes another orientation move, goes from sideways. And then at 906-20, after 906-20, all of Maggie Murdaugh's phone movements cease at this time. Her phone doesn't make another movement until the next day when SLED found it. Now, this is something I told Jim and Dick, and they had no clue about. So I said, all right, let's do some math. And this is me going to Moselle doing this.
Yeah.
Her phone lights up at 9:05:44. And you remember where I showed you where the 59 steps ended, right by the road? Remember the 59 steps? Okay,
Yes.
so we ended up the 59 steps right there. So from that spot in the hangar to right there. So from that spot right there and that corner spot of the hangar where that road kind of just starts, from there to, if any truck, and I didn't do this on the property, I did this with just basic math on Google Maps, and you can do it in Google Maps down to the inch. Just from here to Moselle Road would take a vehicle 6 seconds. Okay. And I told Jim and Dick, I said, put a pin in 6 seconds. All right. I said, Alex out in the front yard. And here's the thing. His phone is making movements because he's walking. He's calling, he's texting, his phone's making all kinds of movements, and his phone is recording his steps.
We're talking about Alex, correct?
Alex Murdaugh's phone is recording steps. But at 9:06:12 and 9:06:14, actually between 9:05:44 and 9:06:20, her phone does not record steps. And I told Dick and Jim, I said, and when I contacted Apple, there's only two reasons your phone doesn't record steps. Number one, you're not walking. Or number two, you're in a moving vehicle, whatever that vehicle may be. And so I said, her phone is not recording steps, even though it just did 15 minutes ago. It's not recording steps while his is. So he can't have her phone in his hand or on his body or person if his phone is making movements and his recording steps. And he's calling her at 9:06:12, calls her at 9:06:14, calls her, and then it stops at 9:06:20. So when I went out to Moselle, I went from the back entrance to where Maggie's phone was found. And her phone was found right at the edge of this kind of little woodsy spot right before something's called, I forget the name of the farm, but there's a farm and opens up into this kind of pasture looking area. I went out, and from the back entrance on Moselle Road, I drove, and I even went the speed limit. I got up to 55 and got to her spot. And every time I did it, I go back and I time it and I measure it. Time it and measure it. 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds. Sometime it would come in at 29 seconds, sometimes 31, but 85% of the time I was at 30 seconds. Remember when I told you to put a pin in the 6 seconds?
Yeah.
What's 30 plus 6?
Well, so
30 plus 6 is 36 seconds. Now go back to when Maggie's iPhone backlight came on at 9:05:44. The difference between 9:05:44 and 9:06:20 is 36 seconds. That's the same look. That's the same look Dick had in his face.
Yeah, like, I'm like, why? I feel like none of this was in-depthly covered in court.
Well, no, it's going to be in his second trial. If he goes to trial, it will be, because Dick and Jim know this now. If you listen to Jim, at least Dick talk about it in interviews. He's got a new book coming out. He talks about this. He never talked about this before. The whole 36 seconds and her phone not moving while his phone was moving. So at 9:05:44, her phone gets picked up. At 9:06:20, her phone gets thrown out the window. Her phone is not recording steps while his phone is recording steps. And it's exactly from this spot in the hangar to where Maggie's phone was found is 36 seconds in a vehicle. And that's what it records, according to the state of South Carolina.
I would also think, too, if Alex was going to commit these crimes, he would be smart enough. I mean, people would like plot and plan, and he would be like, okay, I'm going to leave my phone at my dad's house to make it look like I'm visiting my dad. Like, and those things were not done. So that is where I'm like, I'm just going to the point where like it wasn't him. It wasn't him. It just doesn't, it's not adding up with the data we are now seeing that's being presented.
It's not, and it's not new data. It's the same data.
And that's why I'm not understanding how a lot of this wasn't brought up the first go round.
I mean, the SLED, in any investigation, the last one to see him, the first one to find him, he's the husband, he's the father, like it's suspect. Sure. They were going after him from the beginning, which is probably why he lied in the cop car and said that he didn't go down to the kennels. I don't know why he lied, but he lied. He lied. I think he lied a lot. He was an attorney, first of all. But somebody asked a question, why did they take Maggie's phone? I think because Maggie came out with her phone in her hand, I think to see what she saw.
What was going on? Yeah. To call 911. I heard a gunshot kind of thing. Sure.
Right. Was she on Facebook Live? Was she trying to figure out what she was doing? Alex knew her passcode. He gave it to Buster, who gave it to SLED. So I mean, that's Alex. Why fumble around trying to get into her phone when you can get into her phone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just amazed. So at this point now, I saw you dropped a video the other day that we are going to have a new court date coming up. Is that confirmed? That
is confirmed. So there is, yes. So, excuse me. And Alex Murdaugh has a date with the South Carolina Supreme Court. I think it's February 11th. February 11th. And what I can tell you is I believe, based off of a recent decision that the South Carolina Supreme Court just made in another Murdaugh trial, I believe they're going to overturn the conviction of Alex Murdaugh and send it back and let the state try to get another conviction. And here's why. There's a guy by the name of John Joseph Erb. And on November 26th of this year, I think the state of South Carolina gave us the clearest view that they're ever going to give on court errors as they see them, as they arise in the jury room. So not to get too deep into the Erb case, but basically what had happened is they said the judge in the Erb case mishandled jury polling. So jury polling is at the end of the trial, and everybody says, yeah, he's guilty or not guilty. They'll say, juror number 1, is this your vote? Yes. Juror number 2, is this your vote? Well, in the Erb case, there was a juror that said they wanted to change their verdict when they were getting polled. And
yes, I just saw that 2 days ago.
Yeah. And it was not guilty, but guilty of voluntary manslaughter. And the jury was polled. And the 11th juror that voted guilty was no longer her verdict. She said, I want to change my verdict. So instead of instructing the jury to resume deliberations, which according to state law, that's what he should have done, this particular judge, circuit judge, Bentley Price, questioned the lone juror individually, despite objections from both the prosecution and the defense. And so what the state of South Carolina did was they threw out the murder conviction and the voluntary manslaughter and said it's with prejudice. So they don't even get to try it again. That's how they, according to their ruling, the state of South Carolina and this Supreme Court cherishes the jury being, a clean jury, if you will. And there's a lot of differences because in the Erb case, the judge improperly questioned a single juror In the Murdaugh case, it was a clerk of court allegedly influenced multiple jurors during the trial. And it was a circuit court judge. In this case, it was the clerk of court, Becky Hill, who is a state constitutional officer of the court. You just go down the line. It's not exactly the same case, but it involves juries being influenced by outside people, being the judge in this case, being the clerk in Murdaugh's case. I believe they're going to give him a new trial. You'll see how it goes, but that is February 11th.
11th. Wow. Unbelievable.
I'll be there. And then
Well,
and when they come out with their decision, everybody's going to lose their mind.
yeah, I mean, there's so much more I feel that we're gonna see in this next, you know, if it goes to trial and we see some things that are gonna pop up that are gonna kind of blow people's minds, and I'm here for it.
Yeah. Oops. Let me just there you are.
I've got your website up here. You guys, please go subscribe. You're also over on TikTok. I love your website. You do a fantastic job on this. And you are huge over on TikTok, obviously. But yeah, let's get you some subscribers over here on YouTube. I would absolutely love to collaborate with you again and talk more, because there's just so much more we can even dive into in this case. Have you been in contact with Alex
Murdaugh himself? No, I haven't.
No.
I tried sending him the book. I found out that it was not given to him.
Okay.
I sent it via, if you send somebody, at least in South Carolina, if you send somebody a book, it has to come from like Amazon or something like that. You just can't.
Indirectly come.
Yeah, you just can't all of a sudden just send a book from your house. So.
Well, sure, you could put some, things in there. Surprise it.
Right. Well, you could take a page and, soak it in something. But no, I haven't. Somebody said I should. I'd rather talk to Buster. There's some lines I need to connect. They're real close, and I just need to connect. And I think this thing is done. By the way, everything that I've told you in this whole 50-page dossier and everything that I met with Dick and Jim, I handed over to SLED.
Yeah.
So they have all that, and that all got thrown into it when I gave them and worked with them on the Stephen Smith case.
Yeah.
So they have all this information, everything I've talked to you about.
Were they receptive towards it? Because my fear would be that they would think, who the hell do you think you are? And I think that's the beauty now of us being able to use TikTok and YouTube and share pieces of evidence in videos, audio clips, all of this, to sometimes literally a case can be solved by common people. Were they welcoming of your information?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Good.
No, there was never any. No, he was like, well, he took a lot of notes, and so they have a website. And I was at my attorney's office, so we all met at my attorney's office, and they have an evidence gathering website, and I uploaded everything there. And subsequently, after I had some stuff that I'd found, so everything we're talking about, including everything with Sean and Patrick, I don't know if they did or they didn't, but I gave them all the evidence that certainly surrounds this case. Including the 90620. I'm like, there's just no way he had her phone. And if he didn't have her phone, who did?
Yeah.
Those are the questions. And I kept saying that to Jim and Dick. I'm like, this is, every time I told them something, I'm like, this is reasonable doubt. This is reasonable doubt. You can't convict a guy and put him away for life.
Yes.
If he wasn't carrying her phone, then who was?
Right.
And then there's a lot of other things that went wrong. You know, the whole stepdad, that thing was wrong. All the stepdad was wrong. I pointed that out to him as well. But the sledge stepdad, his math was wrong. Weirdly enough, the guy that presented that was the same guy I met at my attorney's office.
Yeah.
Really nice guy. But yeah, anytime you want to talk about this, we can talk about it forever.
I do. I want to thank you for your time. I'd love to set up. I'll text you after this. You guys, please go over and show some love, subscribe, check out some of his videos, not just on TikTok, but let's like bump those subscriptions up on YouTube, which is always, you know, hit like, leave a comment on some of those videos to help out the algorithm. I'd love to set up another time where we talk more about Stephen Smith case.
And yours is on the YT, your Deadline Crime and Lifestyle?
Crime and Lifestyle, yeah. And, you know, one of the cases we talk about a lot on my channel is the Chris Watts case. I don't know if that's something you've dug into, but I guarantee you, if you started going down the rabbit hole, you might get hooked into that one as well.
Did he do it?
Well,
your hesitation tells me something.
There's just so much, you know, we'll text about it. There's so much, much. We have a whole situation with a mistress involved and so much, but I think it's one that it will pique your interest as well. And definitely something, you know, maybe we can do another live stream about, but I do want to talk more about Stephen Smith. Thank you so much for joining me today. And you guys go over and show some love and subscribe and check out his website as well. And is your book available on Amazon?
Yeah, Defending Alex Murdaugh is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And I wrote another book for the Egg Lady, Juror 785, Myra Crosby. She was wrongly kicked off the Alex Murdaugh trial. She believes by Becky Hill and other people, because she was going to be the no vote. She was not guilty all the way. And I think everybody knew it. She was the one to get off. So yeah, check them out. They're on Amazon. Just go to Amazon, just type in Crime and Cask as you see it there, and you'll see all my books. I've got another one that I wrote for another guy.
And what I'll do, I always love to put links in the comments section. So after this goes live and renders, you guys, you can check in the top comments. And I think that would make a great Christmas gift for someone who doesn't love to read some true crime on their downtime.
Absolutely. And people love it. And my whole theory, which I've talked to you about in detail, is throughout the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Based off of evidence, that might be of evidence.
Absolutely. And that's why I wanted to reach out to you, because you're literally boots on the ground. You're not just kind of regurgitating what other people have done. And I loved seeing the videos of you out at Mizell. So you guys check those out on TikTok and you won't regret it.
Those are fun. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.